Samaj, for all of you for joining, not only us, but joining each other for these exciting 3 days of a food system summit discussions. They've been a learning experience, not only for all of you, but even for the organizers. This is the concluding plenary, and I'm absolutely certain it's going to be a lively discussion today. I want to give a perspective. Can you please sit down? Can you please sit down, all of you? Or have your discussions outside? You have to, because everyone's here. I want to give a perspective on the status of our food systems through the episode in a book, Zorba the Greek. Today morning I was reading some notes and this came across. An old grandfather of 90 years was busy planting an almond tree. The grandchild told the grandfather, "What, grandfather, planting an almond tree at this age?" And the grandfather replied, "My son, I carry on as if I should never die." And the child replied, "I carry on as I'm going to die this minute." And that is the difference between food systems that the government and the establishment looks at, and this is the difference of a food systems approach. The government believes that it does not make a difference, we can carry on as it is, but like the grandfather, we need to look at a food systems that will be there in times to come. Systems thinking is very common in areas like military strategy, in engineering, even amongst the judiciary, because they look at many aspects, all aspects of a problem to find a solution, to decide the litigation. But in economics and agriculture space, food systems thinking does not exist. It does not exist in economists, I would say. It does not exist in Niti Aayog. It does not exist in the Ministry of Agriculture. Everyone works in their silos. In this concluding session, first I will call upon the pavilion partners, who are also partners with FOLU, to share their pavilion highlights. I request Abhishek Jain, Fellow and Director at Council of Energy, Environment and Water. Abhishek, please join us. Manish Anand, Senior Fellow, the Energy Resources Institute. Ruchika Singh, Executive Director, Program Director, Food, Land and Water, WRI. Are they here? Manish? I think so. Praveen, can you see? Manish must be outside. Sabyasachi Das, National Coordinator for Revitalizing Grain-Fed Agriculture Network and Director VASA. Is Manish here? Well, he'll join us in some time. We shall continue. Now that we are settled in, Manish, please join us. Manish, come here. Yeah, Manish, this side. Yes, please join us, Manish. So we've introduced you already, and we'll be looking forward to your points of what you learned, and in a short time. Now that we're all settled in, I'll request Mr. Jayahari, India Country Coordinator for FOLU, to give an overview of the Food Systems Summit in 5 minutes. We will run this as a very tight schedule so people get an opportunity to participate and everybody has a word to say. Jay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Don't worry, it won't take more than 3 minutes. I'm so happy to set the stage for 5 minutes briefing from my colleagues of Follow India country partners. 3 things, let me tell you. The major objective of this particular event was to bring the different stakeholders of the civil society together. I think we have achieved up to a certain extent that objective. Am I right? So the second is, actually many people told me, right, they got new connections. They are going to look towards new collaborations and they are going to work a little more efficiently. I'm happy to hear that. I don't claim that everybody of you said, at least some of them said. The last is, this is a beginning. We want to, a kind of a new initiative we want to take forward, which is Food System Hub. My colleague Meenakshi was doing 5 days web search on the different topics of the sessions. We don't claim that these sessions cover 100% of the agriculture, 100% of the distribution system, nutrition, etc. These are very small, like 5% to 10% of the coverage of the segment. She did actually a web search, and we compared with the points emerged in the detailed deliberations in the session. It was uncomparable. Many of the knowledge which you have, which you told to each other, which you shared with us, with each other, are not there readily available in public domain. And these deliberations needs to go as part of the policy making process. And we are committed to do that if you all feel that this is important and inevitable. This is my last statement, and this is where we want to begin. If you are all with us, we would like to continue this journey in the same trajectory. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Jairji, that was really quick. Like, this is the quickest overview I've ever heard. So, thank you so much. At least, I think we are all aware of what each of us are doing. That's the most important thing. And like I said, we need to build our own networks. We should not be dependent on FOLU or the partners or on Bharat Krishak Samaj to build our networks. The whole idea is that everybody gets to build their networks. Now we will have presentations from the pavilion partners. I'll jump in if speakers go beyond their allotted time, which looking at Jerry doesn't seem likely to happen. But I'll call upon Abhishek. You can go there if you want to go there. You have a choice on however you're comfortable with. Yeah, so Abhishek from CW.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Bharat Krishak Samaj, for the partnership with FOLU. I'm Abhishek, representing Council on Energy, Environment and Water, an independent, not-for-profit policy research organization, started and based here in Delhi, about 15 years old. We were running one of the pavilions which was focusing on how do we look at the supply chains in the food system, the distribution system of our food system, as well as the consumer demand. And when we think about the consumer demand, in a country like India, there are two big levers. There is a public procurement role, the PDS ration, the midday meal schemes, the urban canteens, the Indian Army, the Indian Railways, which is determining a huge portion of what we consume on a day-to-day basis in the country. And then, of course, there is a private sector, which shapes a lot of what we call aspirational consumption. The biscuits, the snacks, the shelves in the supermarkets, and so on and so forth. And both of these were deliberated across multiple sessions, trying to cover 3 days of deliberation in 5 minutes. So do bear with me if a lot of things get missed out. Talking about the public side, and particularly focusing on the PDS system, which is in some ways the elephant in the room in terms of the volumes that it manages, the public distribution system, right, the ration system. And there are 3 key themes that emerged, and I kind of tried to frame them across 3 Ds. The first one was demarcate and deepen. So what does this sort of message came out was that instead of focusing on the 60% of the population which is still supported via the PDS ration, many of them may not necessarily need the support or as much the support. Can we start focusing a lot more on the most vulnerable population? It might be the 20 to 30% of the population, but support them well. Support them not just with 2 kinds of calorie sufficient foods, but really support them with a variety of food groups which can cover for various micronutrients and so on and so forth. So demarcate and deepen. The second D was decentralize. This has been a mantra for the PDS for the last decade or so, but we have seen not as much implementation on the ground. But whatever implementation we have seen, we are not learning enough from it. About 10 states in India has started decentralizing it. Can we learn enough so that we can scale up? We can learn what are the challenges so that we can solve. We certainly need to do a lot more learning. That was one clear emerging theme. The second theme in the decentralized was state capacity. State capacity is not sufficient in many of the places, and that is why the decentralization is also struggling. And what can we learn from the states which have tried to solve it to some extent? Karnataka and MP came out as 2 options, 2 states to look at. Can we learn more and more from what they are doing right and try and replicate within the right context some replicable lessons? And the third thing in the decentralized is also localize, which means that as you do the decentralization of the power in terms of decision making and fund flow, Also look at decentralization to the local food groups, the food groups which are relevant to the state, the food groups which are relevant to the rain-fed areas of the state, and so on. So the more you can localize, the better it would be to enable those local food loops, higher sustainability, less resource footprint, and nutritionally far more relevant to the local climatic conditions. And in that vein, the third D is diversify. Diversify to the local food groups, but also diversify based on different kinds of instruments. You don't need to procure everything to enable diversification. Can we look at cash transfers coming in to enable diversification beyond wheat and rice? So that's on the public ration. I'll take maybe 2 quick minutes on the private sector side. On the private sector side, again, 3 things that emerged. First one was, there are a lot of emerging disruptors in the system. New age companies, some FPOs doing phenomenal work in terms of stretching the imagination of our food system, pushing for more healthy, more nutrient dense, and more sustainable options for the customers. Can we support disruptors a lot more? Both creating the enabling environment for them to support each other. And there is a lot that they can share among each other, and we saw sort of slightly surprisingly, there is a lot of interest in they supporting each other. But also, can the government support through the MSME route, through the Ministry of Food Processing Industry route, and so on. The second thing that came out is around standards and mandates. There are now generic ESG standards around emission reporting, scope 3 emission reporting, etc. But there are no standards which are still mandated around food companies or food businesses in specific. We are not talking about reporting on nutrition as a business. Of course, each package will have the nutrition label, but how much nutrient relevant or rich food are you promoting as a business? There are no standards around the water footprint or the biodiversity footprint or the loss that you are creating with your value chain. So can we create specific reporting guidelines and the standards for the food companies and do it in a co-creative fashion? Bring civil society, bring private sector, bring government, and then create those standards so that it is already welcomed by all, co-creative, and then mandate them on the food companies. And the third thing is the transition cost and transition risks. While some of the food companies or food businesses are interested in looking at this transition to more regenerative, more healthier options, they do of course see the transition cost and transition risk involved. These are there for the businesses, but these are also there for the producers, if you're asking them to now produce in a regenerative fashion and so on and so forth. So how do we create actually a sense of equity around the sharing of these costs and risks? Who can bear that cost during the transition? Can we create unique financing solutions that can help address this transition risk and cost? I know I'm not probably doing a justice to much of the conversation that happened, which was far, far rich, but I hope some of these key takeaways will stick with us as we think about our food system more. With that, let me thank you all.
Thank you, Abhishek. That was very nice. Can I call upon Manish? Thank you, Manish. From Terry.
A very good evening to all of you. It's been a pleasure listening to so many exciting lectures, presentations, and interacting with so many distinguished people in different sectors. I'm saying sectors because here we are talking about systems thinking, and the one thing we talked about is we know interdisciplinary, multi-sectoral, how can we think and move in that direction. So the pavilion which we were coordinating was looking at the nutritional outcomes, how to improve the nutritional outcomes. So we had a host of discussions regarding the policy aspects, the innovations, what are the community-led models, how to localize it, plan it, and all this. And it was very rich and inciting. So what I'm going to say is just give you a background or backdrop of why we are talking about this and what has emerged out of the rich, insightful discussions. As Abhishek has said, it's very difficult to capture it in 5 or 10 minutes, but I'll try to do my best. So one of the main concepts that emerged is also we need to have a life course perspective to nutrition. And that means looking at more in terms of how we are acknowledging that there are critical windows of opportunity which exists and sensitive periods where if you focus on enhancing nutritional outcomes, it can lead to a multiplier effect in the later life. So that's one aspect which needs to be taken into account, and that's where the policy focus should be more in the like more in terms of when we are talking about planning and improving nutritional security, because it's also linked to the intergenerational nutritional issues. Underlying that, one important issue emerged was the issue of cognitive justice. So cognitive justice implies that there are multiple actors and knowledge systems existing about this nutritional system. And so indigenous knowledge systems needs to be taken into account, and how to mainstream that. So there were a lot of insights and discussions about that. Another aspect was more in terms of the local community-centric approach. And there were a lot of case studies, good case studies in terms of how to go about it and all this. And there was also a case study on the how to plan this at the micro level. So WHS has come out with this tool on nutritional community-sensitive planning. So as we all know, the development plans, the way it has been worked, it's more towards the infrastructure development and all this. So here it is more at the village level, how we can go about using this tool in terms of integrating mainstreaming nutrition in the development agenda. So it involves working a lot with the community-based organizations, village level institutions and all this, and enhancing the capacity of stakeholders, specifically the women and all. So it has come out with a very, in the previous session, Mr. Vijay Anand was also talking about this tool and how to go about it, and that's the way to plan for when we are talking about integrated system-wide food and nutrition thinking. We had also talked about more in terms of how to have an integrated perspective on nutritional security, looking at right from the way we produce food to the way we process it, package it, distribute and give it to the end consumer. And there are also different initiatives focused on how to localize such food production and consumption had come out, and more in terms of there's a lot of scope for innovation at that front, more in terms of how we are innovating at the product end, but also more at innovating at the awareness generation, those kind of stuff. Then rural and gender perspectives is something which has emerged again and again, because obviously when we are talking about malnutrition, the issue of anemia in children and women, which we all know around 67%, 57%, the data, NFHS data says. So there's a lot of perspectives how to do that. And in that, the life course perspective was talked about. There was also talk more in terms of the degradation in the nutritional quality of food product because of climate change. So linkage of climate change, nutrition, agriculture was also brought about, and there needs to be more scientific evidence which needs to be generated at that end in terms of how it is, particularly in iron and zinc. There has been decline in the nutritional content of the crop produce because of climate change. But we don't have region-specific information and data how it is impacting. So that was, another was also in terms of the carbon footprint of nutrition. There's a lot of food waste and loss happening. So how we translate it into the carbon footprint of nutritional in terms of nutrition was also discussed and talked about. Then the important issue of integrating VAS in the nutritional activities was also very much highlighted in terms of how issues of sanitation, hygiene, and their aspect of awareness generation, community awareness generation through innovative means also were discussed and brought upon. So in a nutshell, what I would like to say is there are a lot of case studies in terms of how do you introduce at the midday meal scheme biofortified, and we had a very lot of discussion in terms of divergent viewpoints on whether we should go for biofortified crops or whether we should be aiming at more holistic view of addressing malnutrition. But the point remains, as a low-hanging fruit, it has been talked about, and there has been case studies also on terms of how such interventions can help address malnutrition problem in the short to medium term. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell. Maybe I have done justice in terms of giving you the broad snapshot of what has been discussed in all day. But as you all know, it's a complex scenario and a complex system, and a lot of issues hidden behind when we are talking about such interconnections and systems. And we try to unearth some of it, and we would like to discuss it more with the concerned stakeholders and bring it more into focus and make it more sharp. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for your points. I request Ruchika Singh, FOLU and WRI.
First of all, thank you. I think the last 3 days have been really enriching. A lot of deep conversations around food systems, and it's been really a pleasure to meet all of you. One of the few of the things that kind of stood out for me at least was, and I think when we are talking about India, it's a mosaic of landscapes, culture, diversity of food, and the pavilion that we were looking at more closely was specifically focusing on sustainable agriculture. And I think few issues that came out, and this was across different sessions which were looking at, what are the best practices or knowledge that's available in landscapes in context of sustainable agriculture, or context of water, how are we what's the access to institutional finance or agri-finance in general that is available, and how are we really thinking about some of these issues together. And few critical aspects that came out was, well, there is a lot of good practices, a lot of learnings that are happening, but a lot of that is happening at districts. There's a lot of, sometimes, we are not talking enough with each other. And I'll go back to what Jehari said. I think Food System Summit, at least, and I did see a lot of our partners also doing that. This provides an opportunity to come together, discuss, share some of that information. And even in the sessions that, I was there, a lot of partners did appreciate that. The other piece, when we talk about sustainable agriculture and most of the best knowledge management practices that were being talked about, there's a lot of intentionality when we think about, even when we're thinking about sustainable agriculture, what it and how, and it could be called sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture. I'm not obviously getting into the nomenclature of that, but most of the partners, when they were talking about, there were few issues that sort of became critical. All of them in their sort of, presentations were focusing on how it's a mix of landscapes and agroecological principles, and how we are thinking about, while it's about food production and nutrition, but also how we are thinking about livelihood diversification and different entry points that become critical. So while, there were good practices that were being discussed for instance, sustainable agriculture, there's already a larger food system perspective that could be seen, where focus was on how do we create that value chain around food. For instance, if they were working around a certain product, if you're developing a Wadi model, then how that's, farmers' access to market, for instance, is being connected. And a lot of those examples came up, which sort of, and a larger consensus was that we do need to think about how some of this knowledge is shared better. One big issue when we are thinking about knowledge sharing beyond information, because information is obviously widely available, and Jehari was talking about, he was also looking at, why a wide, quick internet search kind of resulted in what is current level of information, but we really need to think what that information can lead us towards. And few learnings were, when we're talking about sustainable agriculture, the models that work well is how, partners have been using information technology for using, local community workers in terms of what the practice for instances, whether it's through apps, different other ICT mechanisms to look at, creating larger awareness around sustainable agriculture interventions, or just, how do you do landscape level planning, or how do you sort of converge, public funding in a district, for instance, or in few landscapes. And one of the big learning that sort of was emerging as a consensus is how do we think of philanthropy, for instance, as catalytic, which can unlock, public funding at scale. So there are a lot of these examples that we heard how some of that could come together. So that was something in context of sustainable agriculture and, the best practices that came out quite importantly. Similarly, when we think about water, one of the big sort of critical issues that came out, of course, everyone is aware of the challenges around water, but how we are sort of working with, local communities, especially women, in terms of taking forward for more effective water resource management. And that's becomes critical because that's how the design of local community-based institutions is critical, especially if you're working in rain-fed areas, but also if it's irrigated areas. How are we thinking about efficiency with the crisis of with climate change and shrinking freshwater resources? Some of these issues are only going to get more difficult. So how we think of a more integrated farming and water ecosystem sort of becomes a critical issue. Of course, soil health is a very critical one and was discussed quite widely in one of the sessions, where how are we thinking about importance of soil, and while there are soil health cards, and that's important, but we do need to, again, it becomes an issue of collaboration between different sort of departments, where different departments come together when we are thinking about watershed development, but we are thinking about soil health in a more concentrated way. Similarly, like when you are doing landscape approaches, you need to think about, how a lot of these things come together. Lastly, and I think that's the most important one, which is also the biggest barrier. How are we thinking about, there is a lot more agri-finance and investments that are needed if we are thinking about a pathway for sustainable agriculture, but that's the most difficult one to access. And a lot of discussions that were done, and we don't have all the answers. And I think that's something which needs to be picked up, discussed a lot more in terms of agriculture in general, considered a very risky lending sector. And how do we, access to finance for farmers or even startups, farmer producer companies, etc. They have better access to finance. What is the sort of blending of, that can be created? And one should be looking at banks, for instance, or, public banks. Are they going to be showing the way, or do we need to look at other sort of, institutions who might be able to do that better? Because eventually, if we are talking about, a transition and thinking about circular food systems, it is going to come to financing. And I think that's where the biggest issue is, which is also a lot of issue of financing is also linked to monitoring. Because if any investments are done, what is the outcome that needs to be measured? What sort of incentive mechanisms? What is going to be monitored? And a lot of that needs to be dealt. So it's just scratching of the surface, I would say, that was discussed in some of those sessions. But we're really hoping to take forward some of those conversations as we move forward later on that. And yeah, happy to answer questions later, if any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sabyasachi ji, your chance. You have the last word on behalf of the panelists, and you may choose to disagree with some of them if you want to. I mean, that's exactly what Jayari ji said in the opening, that disagree.
Yeah.
So we're fine with that.
We always say that we are agree to disagree in several things, but I was thinking that whether Jayari was in very hurry, so whether he has a flight to catch for Kerala or not. But good thing is that he saved 2 minutes for me. Because we are a good friend and long time friend. Thank you very much for that. But anyway, so this is but first of all, I would like to thank FOLU as well as BKS for actually giving the opportunity for an area which has been neglected during the discourse of the Food System Summit. So this is about giving the pavilion for rain-fed area, which is basically the 50% of the cultivated area in the country, where 60% of the farmers are there in the country, and 80% of the small and marginal farmers lives in that area. That needs to be spoken. This area has to speak about it. And then also, this area actually produce nutrition for the country. 89% of the millets, 88% of the pulses, the oil seed, most of the oil seeds come from this area. And so therefore, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to rain-fed area management as a pavilion in this discourse. Okay. So now there has been a lot of discussion and then a lot of session has happened, and I really thank all the speakers and all the people who have joined in the various session that has been organized in the rain-fed area management pavilion. I thank you for your time, your deliberations, and the input that you have provided to take this discussion forward. So first of all, the water happens to be the central discussion point in the rain-fed areas, but it needs a different kind of a mindset. It need a different kind of a landscape lens. It is not the irrigation infrastructure that is required for the rain-fed. It is the more creating the sources, managing the sources, and empowering communities and the local governance system to manage the water, and it is required at the soil profile. So that is most important, and looking at investment for the groundwater recharging and also the spring sets, water sets. This needs investment, and this investment in the recent past has been reduced a lot. And then when we are looking at rainfed to provide a lot of diversity, the diverse food, it is important to invest on the rainfed, and particularly in water, but on differential way. We also spoke about, because this is the area which actually brings in a lot of diversification, but not the diversification the way that monocrop diversification and diversification in a monocropping framework is not required in the rainfed. A lot of experience has actually been shared by the farmers, and I thank also FOLU to allow us to bring in a lot of farmers and the champions who have done this work on the ground to bring in this platform. Some of them are there, but some of the people, they have left because they have to go, because they have been here for 3-4 days, including the travel time. So, but it was said that diversification is required primarily in the case of the upland rice, which is around 6 million hectare area covers by that. Can we bring in the multi-cropping system, which has been the strength of the country in the rain-fed areas, and what kind of a support system that is required? And this multi-cropping system can actually spoke about, it's create a synergy between the land, life, and living in this planet, and particularly in India. And this diversification also needs some kind of a support system. And in our session, there was one talk that if you change the seed, you can actually, it can be a lever to change the food system itself. If we look at the traditional seeds and varieties which are nutritionally dense, right? Already a lot of varieties, and a lot of this work, this conservation of the traditional seeds has been done by the women in the country. And if you look at several experiences in the morning also, there were some references of that, and we spoke about that how the traditional seeds can come into the mainstream system, so that the more diversity is there, more nutrition dense seeds are available, so therefore we can actually get into a more diversity in the plate as well. We also spoke about some of the things which has been talking about for last 4-5 years intensely about the millets, bringing millets into the plate. Last year being International Year of Millets, a lot of celebration has happened, but we are also looking at that after the celebration, a lot of diversion has happened also, and backtracking has also been happened. A lot of states has actually announced a millet mission, most of the state as well. But I think as long as we are not looking at a ecosystem support for the millets, which has been, millets was, we used to say that millet was conserved by the women, and now with a lot of experiences from the women in Odisha, which actually empowered the millets discourse in the country as well. So we see that there is a need of ecosystem support that has been discussed, bringing in all the people together, the business, the community, and the decentralized processing, which allows people not to grow the millets only for export, but to consume in their home. So that is important. Those are the important interventions that is required, that people have talked about it. Some also been said that there was a Niti Aayog experiences in bringing millets into the ICDS, and then some of the experiences happened in the aspirational district, whether those kind of an experience to be taken up in the aspirational block, which are also in the rain-fed areas. And then we also see that the role of NARA in taking this conversation forward. Fortunately, we had Mr. Franklin in one of the session where we had a conversation with him to take this kind of a discourse in the government system, where you need to bring in Women and Child Development Department, Agriculture, PDS, as well as the Niti Aayog in the conversation of the aspiration, taking the millets into the aspirational blocks as well. And then we also discussed that it's not about the crops. It's all about in the rain-fed and the food system. It is crops, livestock. We also call it as in extensive system. It produces a lean meat. Now, many of us are afraid of the obesity and all that, but this is the area, the extensive livestock system, which actually produce the lean meat, desi poultry meat, and it also produces a lot of milk, and some of the presentation was about the camel milk, and where people say the camel milk is not a milk, it is a medicine. So this is the strength of the extensive livestock system, which are primarily into the rain-fed areas. And it is also, we also spoke about that there is a lot of, we need to look at agriculture, the forest system, the livestock system together, which can actually need we need to look at the solutions in the different bioagroecologies. So one bioagroecologist offers a different kind of a solutions for the food system, and some other bioecologists provide something different kind of solutions. So therefore, the looking at agroecology, looking at the agroclimatic zone and bioregions will be very interesting to provide different kind of solutions to the food system in India. Lastly, probably last 2 minutes, I probably taking his 2 minutes time, only 1 minute, okay. So this year also offers, because we are coming towards a international year of rangeland and pastoralist in 2026. And in this conversation, we also spoke that this can also offer a lot of energies into our system, because pastoralists looked at backward. Also, they have been blamed as methane producers, but we need to look at, as there is a lot of discussion happened, that extensive livestock system, the pastoral system, how there is a lot of misleading calculation, and therefore we need to recognize that what are this kind of system offers. Probably lastly, we would say that there was a discussion with the Joint Secretary who also guides NARA. We said that there is a need of a comprehensive rain-fed agriculture policy in the country, for which has been pending for quite some time. A lot of civil society and the farmers organization has provided a lot of support, and that needs to taken up forward. And then also we see that these rain-fed areas, since they are the most vulnerable into the climate change, so a lot of climate resilient, now a lot of discussion happening on climate smart, but we need to have a more climate resilient agriculture for the rain-fed area. I think with these sessions and all this discourse, they can provide this rain-fed agriculture, rain-fed area, where you see the lot of diversity. If we act rightly, it can offer an unique Indian solutions, Indian story of food system summits, food system transformation in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I think that's a lot of information to digest, and I feel that everyone seems to be enjoying this. But each pavilion partner, I believe, will take out a document of the respective pavilions, which will add on to the bigger document. And I sincerely hope that we'll be able to get out the disagreements that happened in the halls also in those documents. We should be able to document and put those disagreements out because they were definitely there, and that's the whole idea of doing this. And the trick is to avoid the conscious and unconscious bias that creeps into all work of all institutions, including ours. And the unconscious bias I get is, like Kavita said, that you can't, if you start looking at the whole food systems, it becomes very complex. So everybody's focusing, some people are focusing on nutrition, some people are focusing on what's happening on the ground with producers. I think everything is required. It's not got more complex. Lots of people also say that food policy making has become much more complex. I don't think so. It's become complex. I think we are now into a food systems or a systems approach where we are looking at things differently. And that's why they seem more complex. Maybe they were complex all throughout. It's just that now we realize that we need to look at other aspects that are happening. Thank you so much. If you take your places, then we will move on to the more engaging section where we will get बाद में ले लेंगे, हम सब यहीं हैं. Let's just do this. Let's just carry on with the program. क्या होता है कि Nand Kumar ji, what happens? I don't know what happens in South India, but in North India, when you go for weddings, you need to go on the stage and get your photograph clicked with the couple. And that's the only memory that family has, that you actually went for the weddings. The weddings have become so huge. So we'll do this photograph after this. You only do that. So we'll also do that after the event. So imbalances in the food systems are in many forms and have existed since eternity. It's not something... I thought you're taking me off the dais, but anyway. So they have existed in eternity. And these... Just let it be now. These imbalances need to be acknowledged. And one part that has not been addressed is the representational asymmetry, where society and the government have reached a conclusion that producers and the less articulate aren't good stewards of knowledge, of solutions, and that's why they do not require a place at the table. So this is now, I don't know, I can't say universal, but across the union government, across the state governments, it's everywhere. It's the same story. Everyone is telling farmers, producers, primary producers, those down the value chain at the bottom of the pyramid, that those at the top are going to decide what is going to happen. And this happens because we lack external barriers like societal accountability. Imbalanced relationship is not self-correcting. Let's be very clear. It's not going to solve itself. We need to convince those, and it's a difficult job to do, and that's the biggest challenge of food systems. What we will do now is we'll open up the floor to all the participants, and we will not make it a Q&A because it becomes, I think we don't have time for a Q&A, and there's nobody here to answer questions, and I refuse to answer on behalf of them or on anybody else. So what we'll do is we'll open up the floor. We will not ask people what you enjoyed in the session, Jayari ji. Because it's easy to get answers that we want to hear. Let's say, what can we improve for the next year? Or what can change? If you were doing a food systems dialogue, you're doing a food systems approach, or what do you think is required? We'll take the mics around. We'll take not more than 1 minute per person. We will not give an ithas, we will not give a history of where you come from. You give your name, your organization, or your region where you are from, because interestingly, I think there are people from over 50 to 60 places across India that have come here, which is a great strength. From all the way from Northeast India to Himachal Pradesh to Kerala to all places, people are here. And so we'll open up the floor for comments from all the participants.
Hello. My name is Rohit. I'm from Himachal Pradesh. I really learned a lot of things in this seminar. I would like to thank FOLU and BKS for inviting me here. And especially would like to thank BKS because a small state like Himachal and the North... Exactly, sir. That's where I'm coming. जो मुझे इस पूरे उसमें समस्या जो लगी, which I'm trying to complain about, is that state like Himachal Pradesh and smaller states of the Northeast, हमारे बारे में किसी ने डिस्कस नहीं किया. हमारे वहां पर क्या प्रॉब्लम्स आने वाली हैं, because we don't have those problems yet. We are all discussing about the problems that are in the bigger regions, the Punjab, the bigger states, Madhya Pradesh, और इन सब चीजों के बारे में. हमारे वहां पे भी समस्याएं हैं malnourishment की, हमारे वहां पर भी समस्याएं हैं, but none of the organizations are working in the smaller states. So we would really appreciate if the bigger organizations can come into states like ours also and do some surveys and some things out, because we can see that we are also going towards the things that the bigger states have already reached. तो उस जख्म को नासूर ना बनने दें, उस जख्म को अभी जब जख्म लग रहा है उसे ठीक करें. धन्यवाद.
If those who don't want the email addresses and contact details shared, please send us an email within the next 10-15 days. And then we will not share it, but otherwise everyone will get everyone's detail. तो आपको हिमाचल प्रदेश में, if you liked ideas, sometimes क्या होता है कि we are not able to exchange telephone numbers, email addresses. So you will get those details and hopefully you'll be able to connect and build your own networks.
Thank you, Michiel van Erkel, Netherlands Embassy, Agricultural Counselor. Something I might look forward to next year, as you asked. During the session that I participated, I heard a lot of speakers tell about the huge amount of tons of greenhouse gas emissions that they have avoided. It almost sounded like a market, I would say. Couldn't we do something with pledges or try to create a market of all these people? I mean, all the people here, I get the impression almost, especially from the business community available, that they are really working on this. It's just an idea, a thought that I got when I heard the session and when I heard your call for, okay, what could we improve next year?
Thank you so much. We'll come to your embassy and we will take this discussion forward. And we'll get other people on this. Really nice. Just take it right at the back. Yeah. Just after this, I come back to you.
This is Deepak from Green Pod Labs. I think one thing what I would expect a lot is, we've been talking a lot about the problems, and those problems have been more on the surface level. One thing what I would expect is getting a ground reality check a lot more. It's majority of conversations what I listened to was more of an academic view on it, rather than looking at what are we going to do to solve this problem. That connection, I feel if we don't bring it, this will be another conversation and nothing will have as an impact. So that's the point of view.
Great. So less theory and more ground up experiences and ideas.
Yes, I'm Dr. B.L. Saraswat. I would like to just suggest 2-3 things. I think 3 more sessions may be included for next, your events. Yes, one for northeastern region and hilly states. Second, agriculture allied activities separate session. And third one, international happenings or technologies upgrades and whatever is on date we have. So I think 3 these type of small session may be included for that.
Definitely, that's something for Follow to think about. But as Bharat Krishik Samaj, we definitely want to do a systems thinking on imbalances in the food systems. That includes consultancy firms, it includes donor agencies, it would include corporate houses. I think so those kind of a summit is also required where we get bottom-up voices. So please.
Okay, this is maybe a little more philosophical, but...
You got 1 minute. You can do your 1 minute is what you have.
When we talk about resilience, and then you're also talking about disruptive technologies, those don't go together. When we're talking about resilience, we're also saying, things, there is a certain slowness, a certain, that takes, there is time required to adapt, to, to absorb ideas and to move forward on it. And especially when we work with communities who embody these principles, and then we go and tell them, okay, you need to work on this particular thing and on that particular thing. There's this inherent contradiction that, I really feel most of the people in this room, because, we have been trained and educated in a certain way, and this idea of resilience somehow we don't understand is the feeling I'm left with. And we really need to spend a little more time, slow down a little too, and really examine what is it that we are trying to promote. Thank you.
I would like to see a collab section. My name is Manas. I would like to see a collab section where there is a space for people who have solutions and ideas, and which is like an open desk or booth section, to be open to interaction in free time or longer time. So we can also not just discuss the challenges, but also are opening to improvisation, innovation right at the session. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. My name is Raman. I'm a practitioner in food and agriculture. One quick reaction, marketplace for ideas and action. So you can add the two words and action, which actually then starts to build on this, the various ideas that have been exchanged and disagreed. I think that's very important, picks up from the point Manas is making about collab, but build it up. The second is, in many of the conversations, I heard people talk about traditional technologies and so on and so forth. So you know that India is now embarked on the National Adaptation Plan exercise, which just got approved. And there is a specific section there on traditional knowledge and approaches. So that's a place where I think food systems team can contribute very significantly.
Yeah, if the government comes to your programs, it can. So
more union government participation if you know how to do it. The second is state governments. A lot of innovations are happening and they don't share amongst themselves, and I don't think the union government provides them a platform to learn from each other. State governments, especially given that RKVY has come back and innovations will possibly happen through RKVY.
absolutely, I think so. It's vital to get that network. Like network between governments also is required because they're not meeting.
एक्चुअली एक चीज मैं मिस कर रहा था, मैं मतलब आई वाज मिसिंग, ठीक है, यहाँ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को चलाने वाले लोग थे, अगर अच्छा होता उनके साथ कुछ किसान भी जो जेन्युइन के खेती करते हैं अगर वो होते हैं, और प्लस सीड्स का एक बड़ा वो है, तो सीड्स बहुत सारे ऐसे देश में बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो हमारे देसी सीड्स का कलेक्शन करते हैं, अगर ऐसे कुछ हम किसानों को या लोगों को ढूंढ के यहाँ ला सकते, उनके एक्सपीरियंसेस शेयर कर पाते तो.
My name is Sijo Abraham and I'm from CEW. I think there is a big opportunity to include fisheries into the discussion that we are having, which was completely missing in the Food System Summit, because there's a lot of opportunity for nutrition, livelihood, and climate resilience in general as well.
So thank you so much. I think so. We've got a lot of comments have come in of value to us. We'll move on to the last little section of our summit, and Jayariji's told me it's already time. I'll just request Nankumarji, former Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, S. Vijay Kumarji, former Secretary, Rural Development, and Vijay Anandji, former Chief Secretary, Kerala, to come on the stage and share your final. And Jayariji, I would want you to also come up. Nankumarji, I'd want to put this one point across. Media and society have wrongly concluded that farmer unions are contrarians. They keep saying that farmer unions are contrarians. As where I come from, I think a contrarian isn't one who always objects. That is a conformist. So farmer unions are conformists of a different order. I don't think so. They are contrarians. And we need to become contrarians, which I would say independently reason from ground up, resists pressure to conform. And Bharat Krishik Samaj tries to be a contrarian, but not be conformist of opposing everything that comes its way. So I think so we'll just request Nankumarji, we'll just go in your order because you're here, to give your comments, and then we'll end with Jayariji giving, as you like.
No, I wanted to introduce Mr. Vijayanand, if you don't know him, the ex-Chief Secretary of Kerala, but that's not his credit. The credit is, he's the one who built up Kudumbashri, which is a strong women's organization, probably an international model. I don't think, of course, people have tried to replicate it. I don't know how much success, but I know because I live there. I can certify that it's probably one of the best women's organizations that you can create. So I would like Vijayanand to speak first. And
friends, I'm probably the odd man out. I'm not in this sector, but getting the sense of what has been happening. Some messages from me. One is the NFSA develop a backward linkage to agriculture and a forward linkage to nutrition in a decentralized manner. That's my first advice. Second is which I made in my group, the Gram Panchayat SHG partnership potential, political democracy and social democracy. 2.5 lakh plus Gram Panchayats with 3 million plus representatives and at least 1 crore SHGs existing almost all over India. If they can come together with their resources and the processes which have been put in place, the GPDP and the village VPRP by the SHGs, if you can work and bring them into a synergy, a lot of things can be achieved. Maybe not to that extent for agriculture, but certainly for nutrition of people who don't get it. So that is it. And I think the civil society organizations, probably all of you are, in this partnership, you play the role of a professional support agency. It's very difficult. I must warn you, working with panchayats is very difficult. It's quite messy. All of you will have output indicators prescribed by the donors. Panchayats are not amenable to that. But your work will be slow, it'll be deeper, and probably more sustainable. And you can't work all over. You can generate what I call some schools of practice, certain clusters scattered all over the country. And let me conclude. Somebody mentioned decentralization and localization in the concluding session. So I would also say, without democratization, these two don't mean anything. So link it to all this. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful 3 days, and I think we've had a lot of discussion on so many issues. What was encapsulated by the court partners, just a small fraction. And I think I look forward very much to a documentation that will be put out. My own views on this, to be honest, I'm a bit of a pessimist. And the reason for my pessimism is, I've been working in the sector of land degradation, watersheds for decades. And my impression is things are not moving fast enough. If anything, in some areas, things are becoming worse. And it seems to me that this has not yet captured national attention. And so I fully echo the views of Sabya Sachi, who talked about the need for watershed-based, rain-fed area-related approach. And I think the focus on land resources, and land, when I say land, I mean land and water resources, has to be far more concentrated, has to be far more widespread, has to be the basis of all our interventions. And I'm not yet seeing that. So that is one issue which worries me a bit. The second issue that worries me related to this is actually, I somewhere feel that climate change is upon us far faster than we think. It is already there. Some of these things happen slowly, imperceptibly, incrementally, and suddenly one day you wake up and say it's raining far more than it used to, it's raining far more intensely than it used to, it seems to be hotter than it used to be. All those things are happening. And it seems to me we are not yet gearing up systemically, and that's why I fully endorse what Ajay says about the need for a systems approach. We are not gearing up systemically to address climate change impacts in its entirety, whether it is soil quality, whether it is moisture, whether it's the seeds that you need, it's the livestock. Bits and pieces are going on, but the overall thrust and drive and determination and vision, I think, still needs to come out, and that's something we all have to work towards. We can do only so much incrementally, and community action is an incremental approach up to a point. The great disruptions will occur through far more effort, through far more investment, through far more knowledge creation, through far more R&D, and I'm not sure that we are there yet. And lastly, I want to bring the issue which is the most inconvenient of all. And I was hoping Mr. Vijayanand would say it and spare me the trouble. Panchayats. to expect panchayats to deliver, except in maybe 2 or 3 states, is asking for too much. Yet, this kind of effort all over the country, every village, every parcel of land, for it to happen without a local institutional mechanism to anchor it and take it forward and house local knowledge and motivate people and keep them working at it, not possible. And panchayats are not up to it for a very simple reason. If you take the average population size of panchayat in Kerala, panchayat, I'm not talking about block, mandal, district, average panchayat is about 25,000. That's the average population, am I right? Yes. In Bengal, West Bengal, again it's about 17, 18. No, Bengal is good. Yes. 17, 18. But you take UP, you take Bihar, you take Rajasthan, it's 4,000, 5,000. Yes. At a size of 4,000, 5,000 population and commensurate physical area, the panchayat cannot do spatial planning. They cannot employ an AE and a JE. They cannot even call the village level worker to sit in the Gram Panchayat meeting. He is above them. So unless we make the structural change in the Panchayati Raj system, and I'm afraid it's almost impossible because it's actually now constitutionally sort of written in stone without thought. Unless we make that change, I really do not see how it's going to make that kind of global, when I say global, I mean global in the Indian context, that all-encompassing change, bottom-up change that we really need to do to improve our resource base, improve our biodiversity, improve our natural resource management, and improve our climate change adaptive capacity and as somebody said, resilience. So for these reasons, I'm worried, but I'm also encouraged that people are starting to think about it. But we need that thinking to actually go and make those large changes that enable all the small changes then to take place. Thank you.
Thank you, both Vijay Kumar and Vijayanand. Made my task very easy. Well, I don't have too much to say because I've listened too much and the hard disk has kind of collapsed. But the real takeaway from me in this 3 days has been the listening that I did. I think I heard very, very interesting things that are happening, which is the reason why I am optimistic, because things are happening, though at a small scale, in different parts of the country. And I think when we planned this, and somebody said ground up experiences, when we planned this seminar, I think we started with this word. We wanted to bring ground up experiences to show up in Delhi so that we learn from them. We couldn't get as many as we would have liked, but yes, we made a beginning. Now, to me, the takeaways are very simple, and actually 2 of them are repeats from the previous Food Summit. And I emphasize the word local, and it can have very many manifestations. I won't get into that. It has been said in many ways. But the key word is local. The other key word for me is systems. And that has been said. Of course, I have my own interpretations. The third key word, which has come in very clearly, is planet. Planetary boundaries. You can define it whichever way you want to. 2 more key issues that I would like to state here. One is about institutions. Now, I would see Panchayat as an institution. I would see many of these structures as institutions. But my point really is, why aren't we thinking of institutions outside the government system? They're also institutions. For me, Amul is an institution. NDDB is an institution. Some of the NGOs who have done great work are institutions. I think the time has come when we dissociate institutions with government only and we build our own institutions. And some of them, like some states, panchayats will work, sometimes NGOs will work, somewhere FPOs will work, somewhere cooperatives will work. So let's create this institutional thing. And of course, I would like to end with very sabya. I've given him a task, and I want him to remind him that we have to get on to that task about rain-fed authority, how the whole rain-fed area, which is 50% of the area, how can we look at a very comprehensive end-to-end plan. I think there are some ideas, we'll probably work around it. And the last point is, again, can we innovate at the local level? And I think we need that space to innovate, and it's innovation at the local level that's going to get you the maximum returns of your effort. So I will leave it at that, and for me, the real point has been that I've been able to listen, I've been able to connect. I'm sure that you have been able to listen to a large number of ideas and people, and you've also been able to connect. And I must also compliment the two moving forces behind this conference, Sri Jay Hari, stand up please, Sri Ajay Jakar. Thank you very much.
Jayji, a vote of thanks from you.
There were around 120 speakers over these 3 days. I thank all of them at different capacities, presenters, overview speakers, plenaries. I don't want to mention their name. It's going to be half an hour, thanking session. But I thank them all first for enlightening us with their knowledge. I thank Mr. T. Nandakumar, Senior Fellow FOLU and President VKS, and Mr. S. Vijay Kumar, the FOLU India lead, for all the guidances. Without their proper guidances, this wouldn't have materialized. A big claps to them, please. I'm not thanking Ajay ji because this vote of thanks is also on behalf of him. We partnered it and listened to this, you should listen to my sound as his sound as well. So I reserve my gratitude. I thank Mr. Vijayanand for joining us during the concluding event session. We have Nico, Priya, and Irma from IKEA Foundation who joined all the 3 days and spent all the time with us, and I thank them specially. I thank the team CEW, Terry, RRAN, and WRA India, and Center for Responsibility, CRB, for making this happen, because they were running the show in 4 parallel pavilions, and a lot of work they have to do, and we have a lot of information with us, and they are going to process it and do much of this engagement. They are our action arm. You must have seen me many times. Probably you must have got bored of me, seeing here, there, listening to my voice, shouting, everything. But that was not me, actually. I want my team to join on the stage. Let me invite Pallavi Singh, Senior Manager Communication, to join me for this. I want you to be here. I'm calling one by one, please. There were 2 major locomotives for this train, front and back. Mr. Parveen Kumar, who was leading the whole arrangement. Dr. Mini, who are owning and making these sessions. I invite them to the stage. The screens were in place, water was in place, tea was in place, lunch at time. There was one man behind it, Mr. Sandashi Mishra. You got all the vehicles, transport, tickets, and vehicle and transporter team. So we call her as solitary transporter, Parul Jain. You got all these communications at proper time. Were all arranged. I invite Hilda to the stage. Several phone calls, communication, invitations at time. Neha Jain on the stage. All which you got as printing, everything, Neha on the stage, but most important is, every time all the presentations were at time available, Arijit on the stage. We call him Arijit. Whatever you see here as displays, behind the whole sessions, event, everything, there was one man spent some, midnight oil behind it. Benish, we call him Nish. On the stage, please. We have Tiwari ji here, who supported all of us in all the logistics. Tiwari ji, are you here? I think still he is missing. Consider that Tiwari ji was here. All this printing, arrangements, and all, a silent person behind it, who tries to be almost all the time silent. Shweta Nikam Falke on the stage. I should mention one name so loud at this occasion who could not join here, and the initial preparations of this big event, the foundation was run by one man, Dr. Soni RK, and I thank him loud. So you heard all these names. If anything good happened here, it's because of them. Because of them. And anything gone wrong, mind it, it's because of my, lack of oversight or my, Oh, sorry, I have to invite one more person. Meenakshi, please come on the stage. A lot of work remaining for Meenakshi on documentation, but she was behind it as part of it. Sorry, Meenakshi. Yeah, so anything good happened, it's because of them, Ajay ji, and them, and we miss Tiwari ji and Soni. And anything gone wrong, believe me, it's because of me. Thank you, one and all. Yes! Yes, ready! Thank you, everyone. Thank you. There's a high tea outside. Please use remaining time for networking. Ajay ji was saying that we were not giving enough time for you to speak to each other. Sometime.